Hello, I'm David Little.
I'm Jill Gittins. So, welcome to our first episode of Questions and Answers. David did a live interview on the 28th of August with Kim Elliott at wholehealthnow.com. If you would like to watch that interview, we have included a link below. Several people sent in some very interesting questions which David didn't have time to answer during that session. So we're going to present these questions in our first episode of our Questions and Answer series. If you have a question you would like to ask us, please leave it in the comments so that we can include it in future episodes. So, here's the first question. David.
Okay.
Why are Q potencies considered very gentle and recommended for people who are quite ill with a weak vital force? In my personal experience, I find the Q potency to be very powerful.
You know, I'm not really sure where this idea of the Q being suitable for sick, weak, old people. I, like the questioner, agree. I think she's got it right, or he or she's got it right, because the LM potencies are very powerful, even at the 0-1 level, the first degree of potency. They're very powerful and deep acting. And unless the remedy was adjusted in a super special fashion, I wouldn't give it. I prefer to use the low potency Cs when there's heavy organic pathology, weak in vital force. I find that the lower potencies are suitable for this level of pathology, a physical dose for a physical pathology. Of course, you still have to be careful even with the 6C. But just to go away and give the LM01 daily for a month to an old, sick, and weak person because it's so gentle doesn't make sense. It's not part of my medicine of experience. And evidently, it's not part of the questioner's medicine of experience. So even when using the 6C, you should use it in medicinal solution with a few succussions, small doses, maybe gentle olfaction. Move gently, softly, carefully with the old sick and infirm, with weak and vital forces. Because if you aggravate those people, it can cause the pathology to exacerbate. And the last thing you want to do is aggravate an old, sick, weak person. So better to be safe and gentle and start with lower potencies, maybe work yourself upward over time through 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, whatever it might be. Some of the intermediate potencies are a little hard to get. But the idea is to work them up through the potencies. As they get stronger, you can move into higher potencies. This is, in general, cases with organic pathology, that's the strategy, is start low and slow and work up. And as they gain strength and the vitality and the ability to react properly without weakening them further, you can slowly move up to the potencies, but rarely are potencies like 201M suitable, especially in the start. So I agree with the questioner. The LM potency is far too powerful to be given routinely in a mechanical fashion to old people. And that's my experience.
David, here's the second question.
Okay.
Some homeopaths go from a 200C to a Q3. What is that based on? From my understanding, the C and Q potencies are not even comparable.
Well, certainly the C and Q potency ranges are not comparable by the amounts of original substance, the fraction of potency that they have. For example, the 12C and the 0.3 are just around Avogadro's number, where the remedy no longer has any molecular parts to it. But the 12C certainly doesn't act the same as a 0.3. It's a completely different medicinal power. The 0.3 compared to the 12C is like dynamite compared to milk powder. So to compare the 200 and go from the 200 to the Q3, this idea, I don't know why you would do it mechanically anyway. I see no reason for it. If the person's doing well on the C potency, leave them on the C potency. If they're doing well on the LM potency, leave them on the LM potency. If they're not doing well on one, maybe try the other. But this relationship between the C potencies and the Q potencies, the L-M potencies. The relationship between the two spectrums of powers can be understood by observing the similar kinds of sensitivities, symptoms, and circumstances which they treat. So in that way, you can get an idea, because to some degree it's right that the 200C and the LM03 have a relationship. There's some equivalency there in powers, but there is no mathematical equivalency. Is there anything I missed on that question, Joe?
Well, for example, let's put it like this.
Okay.
The LM1, the Q1, is a deeper acting potency than the 30C because of the 1 to 50,000 dilution ratio, which it has, rather than 1 to 100. So they develop different medicinal powers. You can't make them an exact equivalency, but for example, if you're starting at the beginning, if you're thinking of giving somebody a 30C, you might consider giving them LM1, but remembering that it might be deeper acting and that you've got to be careful with the dose.
It is a little deeper acting. I consider the 30C to be a lower potency than the 01 of the Q range.
And in the question, for example, a 200C, now that's quite a high potency, certainly as an opening potency, but you may have cases where you want to give a 200C. It's a strong disease and the person is also strong. Things like that, an acute problem. And to start in the higher range of LM potencies, you might be looking at a 0.3 under the same circumstances. But as David said, you don't go from one to the other automatically. You might make your choice of which potency system you want. And remembering that, say, a 200C and a Q3 are somewhat equivalent in their circumstances and in the type of disease and the conditions and the circumstances of the patient.
In the same way, the 0.5 and 6 have a similar depth to the 1M. Now, these are relative relationships by the symptoms and circumstances you're treating, not by the amount of original substance. You're not going by fractions, you're going by sensitivities, circumstances, symptoms, conditions, stages of the disease. So if you give a 0.6, to open up with a 0.6 would be like opening up with an extremely high potency. Now, in the early days, Hahnemann did open up with some of the high potencies first, and he found out immediately, wait, these aggravate way too much. And then he went down and started working at the lower degrees, 1, 2, 3, and working his way up. So I hope that answers your question. It's a bit of a complicated subject.
So the next question, why do we give a dose daily or every other day while we see improvement?
Well, you don't. If it's a strikingly increasing amelioration, you would stop repeating the remedy and allow it to act because it's already hastening towards cure. If they're only slowly improving at a moderate to slow pace, then you might repeat the dose at suitable intervals to speed that cure. So again, it has to do with Hahnemann's middle path, which I think I talked about in the interview with Kim. It's like if the LM potency is acting, and it's acting in a striking manner, you wouldn't repeat. So she didn't really clarify what improvement means there. It's a nuanced situation. Improving greatly, leave it alone. Improving slowly, maybe a little bit of repetition is indicated. Does that answer that question?
I believe it does. And certainly if you ever give somebody a dose and they improve not only rapidly and visibly, but that improvement continues to increase, then you never repeat the dose while they're going through that kind of improvement because you've got a perfect situation. If you interfere with it, you'll slow it down, you'll mess it up. So, but then if the improvement is there, but it's gradual, you can repeat at suitable intervals and when necessary to speed the cure. And I think that's what you were trying to say.
That's what I was saying.
Right. Okay, here's the next question. When prescribing Q potencies, do we have to be more certain of our choice of the remedy? For example, testing with the C potency first.
You always have to be certain. It doesn't matter if you're giving an X potency, a decimal potency, a C potency, or the 0, 1 potency, the LM potencies, Q potencies. It doesn't matter. You have to fit the remedy. Those triangles I discussed in the remedy reaction. You want to fit that one triangle exactly over the other. Perfect match. That's what you're looking for. So you always want to give the best remedy you can find in a suitable dose, and a suitable potency, and then go by the middle path, how they react to the remedy, whether you let it act as a single dose or whether you repeat to speed the cure. Same situation, I think, really. There's a lot of responsibility on picking the correct remedy in every and all situations.
And if you're not sure if you've picked the best remedy you can, there is only one way to test it, and that is to give it to the patient, one single dose, single test dose, and wait and watch. That in the end is the only way to really know. As they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so this is a case where it is.
Okay, what's the next question?
The next question is, C potency is known for initial aggravation and Q potency at the end of treatment. I was once treated for a flare-up of a chronic condition and was prescribed 30C in drops every other day without initial aggravation, but only at the end of treatment. How can this be explained?
It is true that C potencies, especially potency like the 200C, which is quite an aggressive potency, that it has a tendency to produce quick aggravation. This is why it's so suitable for acute diseases, acute like exacerbations of a chronic disease, emergencies. The 200C is a tremendous potency because it comes on very instantly, just like the situation comes on all at once. So the aggravation towards the end of the treatment was spoke about in aphorism 280 of the Organon. This is when the remedy is moving towards the completion of the cure. That's what he's talking about here. He's talking on how to complete the cure. Now, if you use the medicinal solution on the C or LM potency, it has a tendency to act more in the same manner, in that it goes layer by layer, step by step, overtuning the natural disease with the medicinal disease. There comes a point in the case where there's only the medicinal diseases left, or the natural disease is weakened to such a point that the medicinal disease is the majority of what's there. At that point, it may start aggravating because they don't need as much anymore. It's a time to slow down and make the intervals longer, or sometimes even stop the remedy to see if it leads to complete cure without any repetition at all. So both the C and LM potency, if they're played right, have no aggravation. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, and not in the end. If the potency, remedy, dose are all matched perfectly, then there is no aggravation. I tend to slow down as I start getting into the higher levels of potency, and the patient's getting stronger and better and more vitality and symptoms are going away. I slow down automatically. I don't keep going at the same pace till I get aggravation. I slow it down and even stop it and test the cure to see if it's complete. In almost every case, I never push it till aggravation. Slow down as they improve. They don't need that much stimulation. Any scale, the C or the Q potency scale, either will aggravate at the start of the treatment if you give too large a dose of too high of a potency or you repeat it too much. It'll happen because you're overtuning the disease. It's too strong. Just like the triangle. We showed the big blue triangle and a small blue triangle. Triangles were the same shape, but the blue one, the dose, the potency, the repetition were too strong. So you always have that situation. It'll aggravate any time the dose or potency repetition is too much. So there is a relative tendency where the C's, because of their jumps in degrees in a small medium of dilution, they have a tendency to quick aggravation, but it's just a tendency. It's not absolute. If you play those right, you won't see aggravation at the beginning or end of treatment. The same is true with the L-M potency. If you slow down as you move up through the potencies, maybe you started out with 0.1 and worked your way up over the months to a higher 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. Slow down the remedy as they improve, and you'll prevent aggravation at the end. So you can prevent aggravation at the beginning and the middle and the end, and that's the whole point. So those two aphorisms, what, 280 and 281, right? They are about completing the cure. And they're very interesting, and we'll study those closely. They're very important.
Okay, next question. Do we ever go down when using Q potency? That is, go down through the potencies from higher to lower?
Go down through the potencies. Hahnemann actually, when he was using his lower Cs from X, the 30C, down to 1, the 3C, the 10 steps down, he would actually start at 30 and go to 24, 18, 12, 6, sometimes 3, rare in the later days. He liked those potencies, and he used to actually lower those potencies as the person improved, as if he was following it down and out. And I haven't had much experience with that. And I would like to run a trial someday and test that out. At the same time, when he was using higher potencies, higher than the 30C, he tended to go up. 100, 90, 100, 195, 196, 197, 198. He'd go serial potencies, degree by degree, with the C potencies up to 200, eventually up to 300. So that's all very interesting. He lowered his lower potencies. He raised his higher potencies. Why? I'd like to ask him and run a trial. I should have. After 40 years, I should have done that, but there's so much to do. And time is short, and the art is long. So is there any part of that question I missed?
Yes. The Q potencies, as you were normally raised, though, like going from 0
lowering
to 0
down.
2.
I have lowered them when I need to. It means if I go up to 3 and I give it and it aggravates, I will go down. I'm trying to get underneath it again. And as I said before, Hahnemann actually started out giving some cases LM10, and then he'd go down to LM8. And he eventually went, oh, this is the wrong direction. I don't want to aggravate him. I don't want to aggravate him at the start of treatment. I'm going the wrong direction. I need to go down and work up. So the whole idea of raising the potencies as they become stronger comes with the 6th organon. Okay?
Yes. All right, here's the next question. What is the difference between repeating 6C daily and Q daily? In which situations would we choose one over the other?
Well, you wouldn't give either of them daily unless it was necessary. And you can't equate those two. I mean, 6C and LM1 can't be equated. 6C is a much lower acting potency than the LM1 potency, much lower acting. So there's no reason to give the remedy daily of either potency unless it's necessary. And how would I choose one over the other? Well, like I already said, maybe older person, weak vitality, a lot of organic pathology, you might want to start with a 6 and give them a single test dose, as Jill pointed out. See how it reacts. We'll talk about that. And then repeat the remedy at suitable intervals to speed the cure if and when necessary. So I'm not sure I understood the import of that question exactly.
Yes, the person was asking, like, what's the difference between giving the 6C daily and the Q daily, and in which situations would we choose one over the other?
I explained it then.
Yes, you've pretty much explained that.
Okay.
And remember that the Q potency is much stronger, and you have to be careful about giving anybody anything daily unless the situation calls for it, maybe in a very acute situation of some sort. Now, the next question is a very interesting one. There are some giving the Q potency daily and having the patient come back in 1 month. Is this how Hahnemann practiced?
Giving the Q potency daily for 1 month. How did Hahnemann practice? First of all, we have to look at what's said in the sixth organon. There's a lot of misunderstanding about this point because it's a very nuanced series of paragraphs on this. Actually, Hahnemann starts out by saying in aphorism 246 that anytime there is a perceptibly progressive, strikingly increasing amelioration, let the single dose act alone. That's in the sixth organon. He says that this is quite often the case in acute, but rarer in chronic disease, and you may have to repeat the remedy at suitable intervals to speed the cure. Okay? So, striking amelioration, let the dose act. Slowly progressing, repeat the remedy at suitable intervals to speed the cure. So what's the suitable interval? Hahnemann talks about giving the remedy daily in the footnote to aphorism 246. What does he say? He says, now the remedy in the Q potency can be given daily if necessary. He doesn't say you must give it daily. He says if necessary. Then in 248, he says several things about it that you have to look at in context. He says in 248 that when there's a protracted disease, which means a long, drawn-out disease that's resistant to treatment, you can give the remedy daily or on alternate days, and that even deep-acting remedies may be repeated for months. But the same, if necessary, applies. Plus, he also uses the word may. Now, may can mean different things, and right now they mean different things to different people. May can be asking permission, like, may I have that cup? Or may can be, I may have that cup. I may pick up that cup. May is a possibility word. So you may do it. Why would you do it? Because it suits the circumstances. The same striking, increasing warning is there. The same warning about if necessary is there. So he also talks about the almost daily repetition towards the end of treatment causing aggravations. Well, why is he talking about almost daily if he's giving it daily? So obviously, this is a more nuanced situation. And when he speaks of olfaction, he talks about giving it daily, every second, third, and fourth day. So all of this is in 248. With the warning in 246 to only repeat the remedy daily if necessary. So he gives a number of clinical scenarios, and he describes how to handle them. But they're all nuanced. They're all variables, because the if necessary is always there. So what did the Paris casebook show? It showed that Hahnemann gave commonly single doses by olfaction, and he'd have the patient come back in 7 days. And then he'd look at the case. In many of those cases, he'd give placebo immediately. Some others, he'd say, come back in a week, keep taking her, to give him another dose, another 7-day dose. Then maybe he might wait a couple of weeks. He always gave placebo in between. At the same time, he was using short series of remedies, 3 to 7 doses over a week, and having the patient come back. If there was a striking response, he'd stop the remedy. He'd give him placebo. He gave almost as much placebo as he gave remedies. And there are cases where he gave a single dose, he gave a dose every 4th day. Variations are there. There's not one case I saw, not one prescription, where Hahnemann said, take the QL-M potency daily and come back and see me in a month. I've never seen a case like that. Okay? So what do I do? That's the question. I said this before, and I don't mean this to be egotistical, but Hahnemann used the Q potency for 3 years, and I've had 40 years to experiment with them. And I've come to the conclusion that the smartest thing you can do, considering the sensitivity scale, considering the various levels of disease and the various severity of disorders, that you have to be very careful in the start, because you may think they need the C potency, you may think they need the LM potency, you may think they need the 30, you may think they need the 0.1, but how do you know in advance? It's all relative, it's all uncertain, and you don't know till you try. So I give a single test dose, and I'll speak particularly the LM potency at the moment. I give a single dose, usually of 0.1, rarely anything higher than 0.3. I usually open at 1, maybe sometimes 2, occasionally 3, but normally I give a single test dose and I have that person contact me in 3 to 4 to 5 days. Usually 3 days, 3 to 4 days is my natch on that one. And they don't have to come back. We've got email and Skype. And when you're used to this, it only takes a few minutes to figure out what to do. They go, I feel great. Say, don't take it anymore. They say, well, I didn't really feel anything. Well, maybe you should repeat 3 to 7 doses at a suitable interval and see what happens with the test series. So first I give a test dose. Then I give a test series. And I see how they react. Is it striking? Is it moderate? Is it slow? Is it no improvement? And then I try to balance out the remedies and the potencies as I follow the case towards cure. Remembering the former question where we brought up how to complete the cure. Slow the remedy down as you go. And why did I do this? It's because in the early days, I gave the remedies a little more freely. Not as free as, I never told a person to take it daily and come back in a month. But I would try a few series. And I would get aggravations on a decent percentage of those cases. And I go, well, that's not right. I don't want that. I want pure amelioration without any aggravation. So I started giving a single test dose decades ago. And I'm still using it today. Whether you're using the C or LM potency, it doesn't matter. You come with your opening potencies, you give a single dose. With the LM potency, if it's going to be striking, you usually know it in 3 to 4 days to a week. It's already there. They're fast in that way. Not slow, they're fast in that way. Usually by 3 to 4 days, if they're going to feel a striking response, they already feel it. By 7 days, you know for sure if you've got a striking case. I've had single dose cures of chronic disease take place over months to a year or more, and with a 5-year follow-up, never relapse off one single dose of 0.1 alone. I've seen it more than once. Doesn't happen a whole lot. It's more common, but some of them are 6 months later, they relapse. 3 months later, they relapse. How would you know if you didn't give a single dose? The cases that are your most fantastic cases are the ones you ruin the most by repeating. You could give them a single dose and they'll fly. The same person you give them a daily dose for a month, I hesitate to imagine what might be going on. Okay? So your best case, the ones you could brag about, become your worst spoiled messes if you give the LM potency mechanically daily for months on end. Hahnemann saw his patients every week to 2 in the beginning. Rarely did he even have a person come back as long as a month. He followed his cases very closely, and so can we. We've got email, we've got phones, we've got Skype. You can check in for 5 or 10 minutes. It's all it takes. Some people say, oh, it's too complicated. It's the usual excuse. It's too complicated. It's too complicated. Say, give me a call in 3 or 4 days. You talk to them for 10 minutes, right? How you doing? I'm doing great. Don't take the remedy. I think you got the basic idea. We'll go into this into the classes. I learned this through experience. It's not book knowledge. I didn't decide by just reading the Organon. That's the one kind of knowledge that Hahnemann spoke about, intellectual book knowledge. The second kind of knowledge is the medicine of experience. It's experiential wisdom. That you only get by experience. And sometimes you have to learn in the school of hard knocks like I did, how powerful the LM potencies are. Some people act as if there's some weak lower potency. that you can give to old and sick people daily for months. It's simply not the case. And as you can tell by the questions of the people who watched that Kim's interview, they understand these things, or they're questioning these things. These were very good questions, actually.
Yes.
And I really had to think about it. I was caught on the spot there a little bit with some of them. They're quite deep. So I hope I didn't cause more questions than I gave answers. And I appreciate Jill helping me out on some of that.
Yes, I'd also like to thank the people who sent in these questions, because they were very intelligent. They showed a real knowledge of homeopathy.
Absolutely.
They brought up really deep subjects.
It made me happy.
So I hope that what David said has been able to clarify
it made me happy. The questions made me happy because I could see that people were thinking and delving into it deeply. And it was really wonderful to have that exchange. I'm sorry we couldn't do it live with the webinar, but we ran out of time and we had a few snags. The miasms got the audio and played with the video, and a number of things happened. But the essence got through, I believe. So that closes out our first question and answer.
Yes, so you can see we love your questions. Please send us some more questions. Put them in the comments and we'll try to put together another question and answer session.
At some point.
Yes, we'd love to.
All right. Thank you.
So, goodbye for now. Stay happy, stay healthy, and send in new questions.
Bye-bye.